I'll let you talk about the project in particular. But yeah, she's done a lecture, an online lecture for us before, so this is the second time she's made time for us, so we're very grateful. Thank you very much. And I've only met him today, but Jason also will be joining us today. You can introduce him. Thank you very much.
Well, Jason will be introducing himself and his work, and he will kindly contextualize my work from an architectural perspective. Go ahead, Jason, so that I am meaningful to them.
Yes, thank you all for coming here. This is a really exciting option to have such a diversity of students. I know you probably didn't expect to come to Cyprus to listen to an American architect talk about a Cypriot boy. So let's try and make this make a little sense for you. I am a practicing architect, and so I'm very familiar with all the challenges of making a technical solution understandable to a variety of audiences. That's actually our job description. It's not that we're designers, we're communicators. First and foremost, we communicate well. And in order for us to be able to have the outreach capacity of working with more than one client at a time, like if you have a committee that you have to work with, or if you have to work with an entire municipality, if you wind up being a city planner, which is something I also do, you have to understand communities without being able to talk to everyone in that community. And the education programs, by and large, for architecture, kind of miss an important point, which is you have to understand the structure of storytelling. You actually have to see that storytelling sounds like something we engage with as children, but in fact, it's every part of every sentence is effectively a small story. And if you begin with that basic understanding, then you know that this is the common language. That's totally different. If you put up an architectural rendering or say a plan, most people don't know what they're looking at because they're not trained to think like we are. They're not trained to see that in 3 dimensions. And we say, right there, it's on the drawing. And there's like, I don't know what that is, I don't know what that means. But everyone understands storytelling. So this is a cheat. If you can actually leverage the concepts that are embodied in storytelling, you have an entirely different level of engagement potential. You understand there's characters. You understand there's a plot. There's going to be a narrative. You show how they can be excited about the experience. That's because this information has a unique opportunity that lots of other industries don't have. Because every story has a setting. That means you can put it on a map. That means it's data. It's useful data. And it's data that your audience is already pre-programmed to expect and understand. They're ready to ingest that. If you speak to their sense of the story, and their basic understanding of how stories work, then you can get your ideas across much more efficiently. If you can speak from their story, now you have more power than you could possibly imagine. I'm always stunned at how effective this is. If you use someone else's story to explain your idea, they think it's their idea. And we're in the business of selling design products. And it's so much more useful if you can get yourself out of the way and let it be their story. Then you get the buy-in, the automatic buy-in. Nafia's research is an extension on some work that her original professor and myself did, which was about local storytelling. Using stories on location, and then making something new and different with it. I used it to make urban design solutions. Nafia thought it's much more interesting if we use this to help people access the emotions from the different locations, as represented by people who are actually from there. That's the big word is a practice, which is she introduced me to this. But taking something that seems like a pretty banal idea and turning it into a piece of poetry artwork distills it down to that emotional component. And If I say a whole lot more, I'm going to be telling you for the entire presentation. So, at this point, I'll tell you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I think you are the greatest crowd I've ever had. This many people from architecture world, I would say. I have students, I have practitioners here among you. Why are you in Cyprus? Like, why? What is this? How does this relate to you as an island? Why are you? What are you looking for?
My theme is identity.
All right.
And I think Nafia is a very good place to study layers of identity, how that affects the spaces and architecture and community. They know.
Okay, you are in search of how identity is constructed, practiced, experienced. Yeah? Okay, if I ask you to look at my title, let's say you have heard nothing about Varosha, you don't even know about Cyprus, and when you look at these words, are they meaningful to you? For example, I know you're all architects and place means something to you, right? Place. How about attachment? When you think of the feeling attachment, what does that? Familiar? Think of all the attachments you felt for your toys, for your loved ones, for your mother. Maybe you carry something as a sign of good luck or something. Attachment as a concept is meaningful to you, I believe. So I will be talking about place attachment narratives as resistance to what? Oblivion. What is the word oblivion? Can you tell me a synonym?
Forgotten.
Forgetting things, you know? As oppression, you can think of all sorts of things about oppression, but of course we are in the context of contested urban spaces, meaning people have fight over it. So when you think of the word oppression within this context, you understand that one claims the place, the other says, no, it's mine. Without again knowing about Cyprus or Varosha in general, are these concepts familiar to you in your experience? Feeling oppressed or fighting over a place, saying, no, this is my grandmother's place, saying, no, it was my grandfather's thing, you know? Are these conflicts, contesting over places familiar, feeling attached to it? You're coming from all sorts of different places of Europe, and I'm sure you have your own personal studies. Now, we will focus on same concepts for everyone, but in a different context, which is Varosha. And why I am into this place, that's another story. I would love to answer your questions after my presentation, but let me just go into the things I want to say, then I will open the floor for questions. Now, this is what I plan to talk to you about. I will first talk about my academic research, which is ethnography of narrative communication. Everyone is familiar with the word ethnography. You know what it is? What is it? Tell me quickly. What do you understand from the word ethnography? When someone does an ethnographic work, that means what?
Related to one's culture.
You go and participate in the way.
Participation and in interviewing the people and participating in the process.
Participating in the way they live.
Yeah.
You know, you become part of their life, their way of living. So my work was, I was participating in the way Varoshians live, to understand the kind of stories they're telling, to communicate about how they feel about their place. And I will tell you about my methodology, some ways of data collection, and I will talk about the findings of that research. Then I'll talk about this artistic application of this academic work, and I name it as We're Not Lost. I'll talk about that as well. And then I will define those poetry stations that I created in the place that we'll be visiting after the presentation. And now I am back to being academic with the research I designed newly, and you have received information about this last night. I know it's a kind of last minute thing, and I know you've been busy with all sorts of other activities. And I also know that you're having some connection problems. That's why I shared them with you last last night. I will talk about the details of that as well, but can I see the hands of people who managed to fill in this pre-experience survey? Wow, you've been amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll talk about that in detail soon. Now, well, this is my workspace. Let's say this is how I try to make sense of all my works. I'm at the intersection of narrative media, memory, and heritage studies. When I say production and circulation of narratives, I refer to all sorts of narratives, be it historical, ethnographic, all the literature, movies you watch, museums, and all kinds of future-related projects. I will mention one of them today. And by telling all these stories, we create communities. Like we can talk about post-war Cypriots. We can talk about Greek Cypriot Famagustians. We can talk about post-2020 Famagustians. What does that mean? After the city was open after half a century. Imagine a closed city opens half a century later, and how this has an impact on the whole Famagusta. We can call this is a new community, this is a new kind of Famagustians. So this is where I, try to survive. Let me give you context a little. I'm saying Varosha, Famagusta. Well, I'm sure you are familiar with the historical background, but let me repeat quickly. We had this war in 1974, and 30,000 people, Greek Cypriot Famagustians, were forcibly displaced from their place, their city, and this seaside southern coast has become fenced-off military zone. And 50 years later, of being close to any human resettlement, what happened? This place has been used as a bargaining chip at peace negotiations, and it is now a contested space, my dear architects, for the future resettlement. And in 2020, as I said, it was open to the public, but the people of the place couldn't return home as the owners, but they're just visiting, just like you will be doing. They're visiting their homes, and they have to follow this opening closing times as if it's a museum. Okay, this is the context. What I have been doing, well, because it's a specific kind of, very peculiar kind of space, it's military zone, it's closed, I had to get creative with my methodology of making sense of this place and people's experiences. First, I said, okay, I have to have a multi-sited approach to this place because there are multiple kinds of things going on. One, spectral ethnography. I was, before 2020, trying to make sense of all these derelict places, homes in ruins. I was just walking by the barbed wire with this partial perception because I couldn't go in, trying to make sense of it, okay? Imagine yourself looking at the remnants of something and try to make sense of this. You can just refine it in your mind, you try to fill in the story, and because you have to make sense of things. Then I found this social media platform, Facebook, that they named Amahostos Polimas, meaning Famagusta, our city, and more than 26,000 people of that place, Varosha, gathers there in that space. Still, it's a virtual space they created to get together and practice being a community. Every day, I'm not exaggerating, every day they share posts that will make them remember the time they had before the war. They just, stay together to keep dreaming of home returning. And I was analyzing this virtual space, and then this is an architectural project, Famagusta Eco City, a new path for peace in Cyprus, which is future-oriented project of how to revive Famagusta from ecological perspective. And I was analyzing this project in particular. And data collection, well, as I described what ethnography is, I was just being there. That's the key word. You've got to be there while they experience being themselves, being a community, being displaced from their places. So I was just being in the church, on the shore, attending all sorts of activities. I was also interviewing people, sometimes in Varosha, sometimes at places that they prefer to. These were participant observation and active surveys were two main data collection methods I was following, and the findings. Typology, the kind of stories they tell, the themes. I was applying a thematic analysis on the narratives I was collecting, and I had 45 interviews, and imagine this being approximately 800 pages long stories that you have to make sense of. And from my analysis, I recognize a pattern of talking about loss, paradise loss, kind of loss. And then being at the threshold, I'm going to give examples of each. One example that I feel it relates to your experience as an architect. They were talking about how they feel in between, threshold, limbo. The other one was transformation. Things started changing in the way that they tell the story of how they feel about their place. And some of them were talking about the future of the place. And I was also focusing on the functionality of these stories. Why? Why do they tell this? And oblivion and oppression were two main reasons they were, telling these stories in every possible context, be it virtual on Facebook, be it in their rituals that they get together to, remember their place. Now, my poetry project will focus on public spaces only. This is also your concern, one of your concerns to deal with public spaces, how communities experience public spaces. And this will take us to my project that you will experience when we are in Varosha. And the link gets you to my academic article published in the Journal of Refugee Studies. So if you want to go in and read the details, it's open access. Now, what do we mean by narrative loss? Let me just give you one example from their mouth. Okay? It is not the building, my dear architects. Not the building. It does not matter. I don't care if the walls are crumbling down. It is the place I walked the first time. It is the place that my mother had dreams of her family in that place. Not the building. Mother dreaming. I don't care about the house as a building or as a value of the property. So not a building, not a property. I just want my place. This is what I lost. You losing your place does not mean that you lost your property. It's the place that your mother dreamed of something. It's the place that you walked the first time. Your place. It is what that property symbolizes rather than what the material cost is. Not the property, not the building, not any material cost. It was a construction of family saving. So the value of the building, a property, is how your family saved money to own it. This is what I lost, he said to me. It was my emotional attachment. I want that back. And let me give you an example of being in the limbo threshold. Only one example. My mother died in 2014, and she loved flowers, trees, she adored them, and she was always planting in pots. Imagine someone planting only in pots. Why? Every time I ask her why don't you plant in the ground, Mom? She said, when I go back home in Famagusta, I will take them with me and plant to root into ground there. And I started another side project where I tried to transfer these quotes from people's stories into short poems, haiku poems, and I'm just showing you one example. Uprooted people plant their trees in pots. I think it's enough to tell how all of us, not necessarily from Famagusta, Varosha, or Cyprus, anywhere from the world, when we feel uprooted, we're like trees in pots. This is what I learned from their stories. And I'm going to give you an example of transformation. Things have been changing. How and why? I'm going to give you two examples, one from pre-war generation, one from post-war generation. First, post-war. I want you to hear a young person identifying herself with the city Famagusta. This person has no experience with Varosha, pre-war Famagusta, okay? Although I come from the region of Varosha, the Famagusta that I know and I have experience and I have memories from is within the walled city where we are now. Because in 2003, after the checkpoint openings, two communities started crossing the border and visiting south or north. And this new generation of Famagustians, whose parents are from Varosha, could come and see Varosha for the first time in 2003. And they started experiencing the city. The whole, you just went out and checking on things. Just like you, she had her first experience with the place that she kept hearing from her parents. And she was saying, I feel so proud. I had friends coming last summer from abroad. I took them for a walk in Famagusta and I was like, this is the lion, this is Otello. And I was so proud that I could actually give them a tour in the city. It felt honored, not in a possessive way, but with my Famagustine identity. So when you talk to young generation of Famagustians, they identify with the walled city more because this is where there's experience. Look at the pre-war generation person, again experiencing walled city as of 2003 with the checkpoint openings. And let me add you, people before the war, before 1974, couldn't cross to see the walled city because walled city was a Turkish enclave. So even for the pre-war generation, Famagusta walled city is a new experience. I have fond memories of my childhood in Varosha, as it used to be, but memories aren't simply something that you have. Memories are promises to your future. So this is someone interpreting memories, having memories of the past as promises for the future. Memories are search, and I reached my conclusion. I cannot imagine my return to Varosha without long, meaningful conversations with my Turkish Cypriot friends over a cup of coffee on the veranda of my house. I cannot think of Varosha without the whole city being part of it. I simply cannot imagine not being able to sit and eat delicious kebab and delicious cake in one of the many restaurants and cafes inside the whole city. This is a new experience. And future-oriented, saying, after experiencing Famagusta with my Turkish Cypriot friends, now when I imagine home returning, I imagine it being with my Turkish Cypriot friends, having access to all these cafes and restaurants in the walled city, because she has the taste now of the walled city. So returning home is not returning Varosha, it's returning to the whole Famagusta, and this is a new experience. Feature, only one architectural project that I'm mentioning here. It's called EcoCity, and you can find all sorts of videos on YouTube, the definition, description of all details of the project. And this is Vasia Marquez, one of the Famagustians, young generation. one of the co-founders of this project, and my supervisor, Janet Boach, was also one of the co-founders of the project. Still alive, but kind of dusted because of this new experience of 2020 opening, people going into different stages, and you need to undust some of the projects. This is one of them. What if Famagusta were to be revived as Europe's modern eco-city? What if we were to right the wrongs of the past, leapfrogging into the future of responsible care for the people and the land, a future of energy independence, local resilience, and self-sufficiency for the sake of a collective survival? So in those future-oriented projects, you can see this idea of ecology being mentioned, collective survival being mentioned, which was not the case before. I mean, you will see Varosha now, all the constructions, buildings done on the shore itself, which was architecturally wrong. Now they reinterpret their acts of building in a city, and now they have this word ecological care, having ecological consciousness of building. Another one, I'm not going to read through this, I just want you to know that this is an open book. You can reach the book from this link. You have all sorts of architects, urban designers collecting in that book, having chapters. Yeah, feel free to take a photo of it. It's open book, as I said, and you can hear all of them defining their concept of ecological approach to place. Right? Now, oblivion and resistance. I did mention all this, but let me just clarify one more, that when we talk about oblivion, forgetting things, they were usually referring their life they had before the war, before 1974, against time passing. We're talking about half a century, 50 years, 5 decades, and we're talking about fragile human memory. So the only way to keep that alive is to keep telling the story of it. And until 2019 and 2019, we had the press entering. Varosha 2020 was open to public. After this, I observed a kind of change in their storytelling. One was more of, let's not forget. But after this, when people started visiting the place, opening it as a dark tourism site, people started intensifying their stories, saying, no, we should do more than remembering. We should claim the places. And I observed all their posts on Facebook, that they were, you know what they were doing? They were posting their home and work addresses in detail, mapping it and saying, this is my address, this is my house, this is the life I claim. There is this difference between opening it to public and before. Okay, change it. The intention, the function of telling the story changed, although it covers all the time, not forgetting. And the kind of narratives they were sharing, sometimes textual, sometimes visual, material, and performative. They have all sorts of ways of remembering and claiming the place. Sometimes they came here, and they, just like they did in their youth, they swam to a particular kind of rock they call Kamu rock, and this has become one of my poems. Because after decades being able to swim to that rock again, and remember they are in their 60s, 70s now, it was their way of claiming the place. I'm talking about the sea and the rock. No personal property, no building. A rock, a natural rock in the sea, and people swimming to it as a way of claiming a place. Now, first I thought, okay, how I can relate to all of us. I was trying to relate to places that I also had in my own life. I didn't have their personal homes in my life. I have no experience with them. I'm not Famagusta, I'm not Varosha, I'm Cypriot coming from Nicosia. So I was focusing on public spaces, like municipal markets, open markets, you know? You all have in your life a place where your mother or anyone from your family when you were a kid took you there to do shopping. Open markets. I'm sure if I ask you to remember the smell of those vegetables or, I don't know, the smell of, you tell me, maybe fresh fruits or maybe, I don't know, kebab, or this is very secret, I know, but yes, kebab was one of the smells. That trip that kind of attachment to a place I had in my childhood, in my Cyprus, not in their Cyprus, which is Nicosia, Vandabulia. So here you see photographs from my Vandabulia. You see here photographs from their Vandabulia. Vandabulia is where we are now, which it means market, where you can buy many things. Open market, you know? Not before supermarkets, this is what we had. And I said, I have to combine these two places, their agora, my agora, because I feel attached to their agora as well. In every agora, you have the same smell of the same tomato, let's say. It may differ a little, but tomato is tomato. But when I say tomato, you think of something. You think of something, right? And most probably they are similar. So we can find the commons of people sharing. This agora that I cannot access, that you will not be able to access today, because it's not in the open area, you will come. I'll tell you about this as well. You will come to a point where you have to stop and have a glimpse over it. And that has become one of the other points in my project, okay? Now, it wasn't just me having this connection. They were also themselves saying, you want us to claim our property? Because in 2020, when the city was open to public visit, they were asked, they were advised by the lawyers that they should go and claim officially their own properties. And read this. I'm now left to claim my home, leaving all others unclaimed. How about my school? How about the municipal garden? How about the stadium, the tennis court, beach, library, even the city streets that I used to pass by every day on my bike, claiming only my personal property? This is how the essence is lost. Focusing only on claiming my personal property is like giving away the affinity, the connection I feel for my city. So when I ask you to describe your place to me, would you really talk about only your personal property? You will of course start telling me about your school, the gardens you're going, I don't know, maybe cafes, you know, where you experience being a social being, part of a community. And they were saying, we're not claiming only personal properties, we're claiming all the public places as well, including the sea, including the garden, including the school, agora, all sorts of public places that we have and experience as a community. So I said to myself, now let's magnify the stories of public spaces, because that's the only way we can connect. Anyone coming from anywhere else still will have connection to a school, right? To a market, to a cafe. So I designed my artistic project, poetry, on public spaces only. And that's it. I call it salon walking because you walk and you listen to my poems on public spaces only. That I believe you will feel connected. I don't know which part of Europe you're coming from, but when I say the sea, you know what I'm talking about, right? Even if it's not in your country that you can go and swim, I'm sure you had an experience of going somewhere to swim. So the sea is common for all of us. It's a public space. So when you hear people talking about their sea and how they claim it back, it should be meaningful to you. Why I named the project We're Not Lost? Because Varosha is named, called, mentioned as a ghost city. There's no people living in it. And the people of Varosha say, why on earth do you call us ghosts? We're not dead yet. We're alive, claiming our place. Don't call us ghosts. That's why I named the project We're Not Ghosts. And this is not only them, it's also me. Maybe it's also you if you feel someone not seen, not appreciated, not considered, not heard. Because this is how they feel. We are alive claiming our town back, and you call it ghost town. If you are in the same kind of feeling, saying, I exist, you are saying, I'm not a ghost. So, I believe we can relate to this as humanity. Why poetry? Basically because it magnifies the human experience. That's it. You have all sorts of this info. How many of you had the chance, even last minute chance, to fill in the pre-experience survey? How many of you? I heard some of you complaining, saying that these questions are difficult. And I receive this as a compliment because that means I'm making you think. Yeah? Okay. It's important to have answered these questions before you go there, because the whole aim of the project is to see whether what I've been trying to do there, creating narratives from the history, memory, and my experience from present time, will have any impact on your perception of the place. Okay? So when you fill in the post-experience survey, I will compare and contrast your answers. And I will say, okay, I'm doing something meaningful. Or I will say, I have to improve my strategies to give people new perspectives. Okay? That's why this is important. Alright? And I think I'm done. Let me just show you the wood before I go. And go through the stations quickly. Do we have still time? Like 5 minutes? 2 minutes?
No, we're at 2 p.m.
2 p.m. Alright, cool. Why are you timing me? I was about to say. This is the map. We will.
It's the 1 p.m.
1 p.m. Oh, I can take you forever. Alright, cool. Stay with me. Stay with me. This is the map of the route we will be taking once we're there. Okay? This is the entrance. We will enter from there and go to the sea. And from the sea, you will hear a poem about the rock that I mentioned, called Come Rock. And there you will hear number 2, number 3, 2 more poems. Then we will walk to the garden. Here you can see the magnified version of it. And then Agora, where you cannot have access to, but we have to stay at a certain point. The color is this. Excuse the colors. We just play with the colors to make it seem a list. But I think it gives you the sense that we have the section with 3 poems, and the rock I was referring to is this rock. So this is the shore. So imagine people swimming until here and back, 1 kilometer swim. And they did this 50 years later, in their 60s, 70s, to claim the place. And I have a poem about that. And the poem will talk about glossa. Glossa means in Greek, what? Language. No, tongue. Well, both, yes, but in this case, they have this name glossa because of the shape of the sea. You see, it looks like it's in the shape of the tongue. So the poem will talk about this, and we have another one in the same station called the Barb Tongue. You already have these poems, I believe, downloaded in your phones. Barb Tongue, why Barb Tongue? Because this tongue, the shape of a tongue place, is cut by the barbed wire. It's cut, literally cut. You can't cross. And we will be here. Here's the rock, the Camel Rock, so small that you can't see it on Google Earth. This is what the poem is about. And then we will have another one, Golden Grains of Memory. And if you're following the application, the course application, it will start playing somewhere here. But if you will be using the manual version with the poems in your phones, I will be with you, guiding you to this side where you can listen to the Golden Grains. But anywhere with sound you can hear the poem, it will make sense to you because it talks about how a father came to the city decades later with his little son at the age of 7. And this is the age when he left the city, and testing how the sand would feel. If the young son feels the same, he said to me, I transferred this attachment to my son. The place will continue with it. And I turned this into a poem. Then we will go to the city garden. We will literally sit next to this sacred fig tree in that garden. This is where you're going to listen to the poem Meditations in the City Garden. And it talks about a bird. This is a Cypriot bird. You can realize it from museums of archaeology. And this is the same bird, they were using it as a decoration during their Orange Festival, okay? And there's another bird in my life. I have never met a bird called Kauai, but when I heard the story of that bird from Hawaii Islands, have you heard about that bird? Hawaii, oh. No? This bird was the last male bird on Earth singing for a mate to continue as a species. And because the bird was the last one, he received no answer to its call and died. And that's called extinction. I put this bird into the poem as a symbol of Varoshians because they are the last generation with real memory of the place. Once they are dead, there will be the extinction, kind of extinction for people with real memory of the place. Okay? This is what the poem will tell you about. Referring to all sorts of cafes around, schools at the back, covered with flags and everything. And the last one, I mentioned about this, right? A Cypriot kind of glimpse. Now, this is the Aurora, you can see it on the map. This is me. This is police telling me, I want to go and see agora, because I told you how I relate to it from my own Nicosia Vandabulia. I really desperately needed to see that place, but I can't, you can't. And the police were saying, I was having this, I was trying to get to it as close as I can. And the police was warning me, saying, you can't go there! You can't go there! And I turned this into a poem, because this is what we keep hearing in Cyprus. You can't go there, it's a forbidden zone, you can't see your future, we still negotiate about it, you can't do that, you can't do that. And that breaks my heart, and I identify with people when they hear police, a soldier, a commander, president, whoever it is, saying, you can't go there, show me the passport that you can cross. Well, that's familiar to all of us, huh? So that's another poem, the last poem. And the sound of music, well, what is this? This poem talks about all the surrounding public spaces like cinema. And in that cinema, they were telling me this sound of musical, was playing on the cinema. And they remember the sound from it. And in a studio, when we record the poems, you will hear the recordings of the poem with a sound design. You will hear the sound of this movie in the poem. You will also hear in the previous poem the sound of Hawaii birds singing for a male. Okay? So this is how I designed the poems in those specific places, stations, and this is the survey. I believe the majority of you had completed. Thank you. Questions? I'll come to questions, but first, the last one I showed you was post-experience survey. This is something you will be doing after the experience. I saw some of you.
Maybe put on the screen the QR code for the poems so people can scan again if they have it already. So they have it. Thank you.
Still, are we there?
Just in case.
Are we there? I saw some of you almost cry. Why? Is there anything you want to share? I felt you holding yourself not to cry. Why? Anyone wishing to share? If not, you have the survey that you can talk to me through writing. That's fine. Questions? Yes, go ahead, please.
I will answer your question. So the notion of extinction, the story of the which is very symbolic for a lot of communities which are threatened by extinction.
You felt threatened.
No.
Would you like to have a microphone to express yourself? I don't want to miss the point you're trying to make. You felt kind of sad and threatened when I was telling you about this ideal extinction.
Yes.
You're young to feel threatened by this. You have parents, grandparents, yeah, with a peculiar memory with a peculiar space. Maybe you can't tell me now. Maybe you can't put it in words now. But if you feel something has touched you, you will have time to digest the things you heard after the experience. Please write to me. I mean, the questions I believe will help you to go through the experience of the place and everything you heard here. Please feel free to write to me. I also edit under every survey even my WhatsApp. Give me a call. Right? Yes, go ahead, please.
Bella, can you speak up?
I think I got the question. You were trying to ask me how I get in touch with the people. Well, I was trying to show you the interviewing sessions and everything. First, of course, there is thank you for the question, because it's a unique case again. Someone from a Turkish Cypriot community approaching to the Greek Cypriot community, which was given politically, historically as enemies, and you approach them and say, you know what, I want to understand you. This is the approach. I want to understand you because I want you to understand me. So I was participating in their rituals first in Famagusta. Okay, they were coming to the church, they were going to the sea. I was passively observing first. Then eventually I identified a few who are very active and passionate about it. I was collecting my courage to approach, I did, but meanwhile, I discovered this Facebook page, and I was observing them there as well, trying to identify the people who would really willing to talk to me as a Turkish Cypriot, as a researcher. And when you approach one, it's called snowballing technique. This person tells you about someone else, and you go and meet someone else, and then someone else tells you about someone else. And it goes on. Now it's a big community that I believe I have built trust. That's how I continue with their support. I mean, unless you have the support of the community, you can't move. And in this process, building trust is very, very important. Any other question? Yes.
At some point you asked us why did we feel emotional. For me, the most emotional part of the presentation was the lady who wouldn't plant the plants on the ground, because I felt that this is a very practical way in which the emotion of feeling that you're still waiting to go back to your place is expressed. So I felt like I got exactly what she was trying to do, and I felt like this feeling of not being able to return to a place was very well expressed through that speech. And it made me very emotional, that part specifically. Yeah, my family is from Kyrenia, and all that.
You just heard a Cypriot response to what happened during the war, feeling forcibly displaced from a place, be it a Greek Cypriot, Turkish Cypriot, this forcibly displaced idea, not being able to return, waiting for decades to return. You have to survive, of course. Meanwhile, you do something which is not permanent, but temporary, like planting the trees in a pot, so that you can later, when you're back home, plant it in the ground of your place. You don't have to be coming from Cyprus, you're from Europe, all sorts of war experiences. I believe this is familiar to everyone with the experience of war. And the reality is we're still under the threat of another war coming or already happening. So we can't just relate to the past experiences or our small island here. The whole world is under the threat of war, and you hear what happens even half a century later. People deal with the after effects of war. Imagine having anyone. This means your grandchild will be talking about that in the way that she's talking about.
And if I want to add something, I just want to say that I never visited Kyrenia, which is basically my home city, because I feel afraid if I go back to it, I will feel unattached, because I'm currently attached to it from the stories of my grandparents, or even from the notion that I belong there. But when I see new development happening there, I feel like I will feel unattached, and that will draw me away from the place.
Let me comment comment on this. I asked Varoshians whether they prefer people being resettled in their homes so that they maintain the cities, it doesn't get lost, or they prefer nature to reclaim it. Because when you leave it to nature, you know what happens to buildings. You know what happens. Your work is to go against nature, trying to keep the building up, right? And if you just stop maintaining all the needs that the building requires, the nature will come and claim it back. And I ask the people, would you really prefer nature to claim it back, or how about someone moving in, taking care of the house, and when time comes, when all these political negotiations done, and you get your home back, you will have already home taken care of by someone else, you know? You can guess, I believe, what they said to me. Go ahead. Nature, of course. Because they avoid this feeling of, what was your word? Unattached. Because when you see someone else attaching to the place, having a memory there, then it's a claustral attachment. But when it's nature, you say, it's still mine, I can claim it back. All I need to do is to garden a little. Yeah? Any other questions? Shall I bring you the mic, or you're loud?
Right now I'm kind of thinking about, I'm from Malta, so kind of very similar to Cyprus as well. We never obviously experienced the same type of internal displacement, but in the 1950s, 1960s there was this period of mass migration to Australia and other countries as well. And my parents recount how even half of their streets suddenly disappeared without sort of any announcement. So my question is, maybe not with Varosha since it's the per se ghost town, but Famagustians in general, the one that stayed here, did you collect any experiences from them about how maybe they also felt disoriented, that how half of their community suddenly disappeared?
Okay, that's a good point. Greek Cypriots, all of them. All Greek Cypriots living in Varosha were displaced to the south, and the Turkish Cypriot Famagustians living in Famagusta were living in the walled city, and they stayed where they were. But we had immigrants from other cities like Paphos from the south side coming here and moving in Famagusta, becoming Famagustians after post-war. So within my experience and research, I can't answer your question saying how about the ones stayed here. They were already always here. But partial. Do we have any case where part of the community changed space and part stayed? It's not partial. It's not territorial. Let's say it's communal. Communities, Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots, were displaced from south to north.
How did the Turkish Cypriots who remained here feel about their neighbors having gone? The people you used to have coffee with, they're all of a sudden gone.
Okay,
So how did they feel about
in
that?
the context of Famagusta, again, they were not together anyway before the war. They were living in the walls, so in Turkish Cypriots. They didn't have any access to Varosha apart from, having a visit to eat ice cream.
But by access, you don't mean it was forbidden.
The word that you would use is ghetto. The
Yeah,
walled
yeah.
city was a ghetto where the Turk Cypriots were restricted to live.
After 63? After 63?
Right.
Yeah, between 63 until 74, we had this enclave of Turkish Cypriots within the walls. But let me tell you what I heard from a Greek Cypriot saying, Nafia, you know what, I apologize. I said, for what? For not knowing that you were living next to me. I didn't know about you. We were just asking about the walls, and we were told by our parents that, Turks live there. Turks live there. That's it. That's all. I didn't even know that there is this community having a kind of life. I apologize for not knowing your existence next to me. That's why I was explaining this post-2003 experience. When they crossed the border to come to Famagusta, the Famagusta they came was this, walls, not Varosha. Varosha opened in how many years later? From 2003 until 2020. The only Famagusta experience they had was this one. And that's why they were now imagining the future of return, not only returning to Varosha, but to Famagusta together, because now they have the experience of the walled city. That's an enlarged Famagusta in their minds. So when you think of a place, you create a map. If you know a new area about that place, you add it to the map in your mind. So now Famagusta for them, ask them to sit down and draw the map of Famagusta. They will include the whole city now. I claim, because they have now the experience of it, unlike before the war. So again, I can't answer your question because we were neighbors geographically, but with no interaction. Okay? Shall we go to experience it, or you have further questions?
No, just following up on that, I say this every time you do this lecture, I feel, but it really stuck with me, so I'd like to share. The first time I listened to this lecture by Nafia, I asked her, how did the Greek Cypriots you interviewed feel about a Turkish Cypriot doing this study? Like, did they react, saying, who are you to study our land? Why are you telling our stories? And she said she never had that experience. And in fact, she herself had the motivation to do so, to ask about their experiences, so she's in turn asked about her experience. Like when you ask somebody, how are you? You're expecting them to ask you, how are you back? When you ask somebody, how do you say this in Greek? You expect them to say, how do you say that in Turkish? So by asking questions, you're also hoping that they also put in the effort to understand you. And yeah, I think that's really special, and that's stuck with me.
Thank you, Asya. You keep saying that. Thank you very much. It's a very special experience. Like I literally had them ask me this question. Have I said this before? I don't know. When I was, you asked me about how I approached them. I was just, observing and approaching them, trying my chance, but being selective. And I think one of the first people I approached, what she said to me? Where have you been? You suddenly feel all the, responsibility on your shoulders, and you question why was it like I should have come earlier? Like she was questioning how long for you, how long it took for you to come and ask how I am, because I was saying, how have you been surviving without your home? This is the story. You've been telling to everyone, where have you been? Okay, she was expecting to hear this question, how are you? 50 years ago. Now someone is asking this question. Well, to be honest, I've been expecting this question to be asked to me. How have you been living in an unrecognized state? So when I ask people how you have been, surviving in your home, what is your experience, how do you imagine the future, eventually this happened. I opened that space for them to start a dialogue so that they can ask how I have been surviving. I deserve to be researched about, I deserve to be written poems on. I claim that, but the way you claim things, I did it for you. Here's the space for you to respond. Okay? Shall we go and experience the real thing?